Hey there, welcome back to AutumnAfar. Thank you so much for joining me today, and welcome back to those of you who have joined me before. As always, any of the sources I've used for this video are going to be linked in the description box below, and I encourage you to do your own research and form your own opinions. This video will not be talking about my time as a travel agent. Instead, it will be focusing on whether you as a consumer need a travel agent or not. My answer is maybe. Okay, so maybe that's not the answer you were expecting to hear. You're probably going to want more information than that. Here is the argument for using a TA, and we'll get into the other side in a minute or two. So there are a few things that using a travel agent does give you. The first of which is security. Using a TA gives you a certain amount of security, for lack of a better term. Working under the assumption that you're working with a good accredited travel agent, it means you're working with someone who's properly trained. So running under the assumption that you're working with someone who is an accredited agent who has been properly trained, they know how to look for everything from check-in and check-out times to the cost of parking, necessary vaccines and visas, health warnings. They even can, give you information on destinations between certain places, like your hotel, theme parks, theaters, all kinds of different stuff. They make sure that, for example, travel agents, at least in my experience, ensure that you are traveling with reputable companies and that you are not booking with somebody who is going to leave you stranded. Not everybody knows when a company is on the verge of bankruptcy, or that a company has a history of leaving their clientele high and dry at destination without a way to get home. There was some airline in Europe a couple of years ago that went bankrupt and just left everybody to fend for themselves, and people who had used a travel agent were able to fix things up for their clients and get them home, and other people who had booked on their own were completely stuck and had to fight for any seats that they could possibly find and paid exorbitant prices. We as travel agents also need to look into certain things when we speak to hotels wherever possible. If there are going to be different events going on, and we would look for and find out things like if the hotel was planning to have any construction done, or if there was maintenance scheduled on pools or spas or anything of that nature, so that our clients would know in advance whether or not that was a property that would have everything they were being promised and that they would have access to those things. So it's not necessarily something that other people who are not travel agents, who are not trained, who don't do this for a living and don't look at this every single day, would know to look for. Travel agents are also your advocate when the worst should happen. When flights are delayed or canceled, or your name isn't on the roster at a hotel, when they don't have the car that you booked, when things go wrong, the travel agent and the travel agency are there to protect and support you. There are so many people who, because of COVID, have had trips canceled and everything else, that have had to wait for hours and days to try and cancel or rebook flights or vacations, whereas a travel agent only needs to communicate directly with their individual clients, get a roster of who wants to cancel, change, whatever the case may be, and they only have to call one time. Very often, agencies will have lines that, if they're a big enough company, will go directly to an airline, or will have a dedicated line for agencies that they can call and speak to people, so that they're able to get their business done faster, so that they're not keeping the lines busy for the general population. Travel agents also generally have a pretty substantial amount of experience under their belts, even if they've only been working for 6 months. When I was a travel agent, I would take anywhere from 2 to 40 calls a day, if not more, during the busy season. And you can rely on them because you don't need to be concerned that they don't know what they're doing. Obviously, there are cases where some people should not be doing that job. If anybody's interested in some of those stories, maybe that's something I'll do eventually. I'll spill some tea about the travel industry, possibly. The company I worked for is no longer in existence in the way it was when I worked there, so hopefully I won't get sued, but we'll see. Travel agents have a substantial amount of experience because they do this day in and day out. If you were taking 40 calls and booking hotel after hotel after hotel every single day, you would know exactly what to look for. You would know what questions to ask. You would know what it is that you needed to say. Like, you would need to tell people things like, there is no guarantee that if you book a room with 2 beds that you will end up with 2 beds. It will either be 2 beds or it will be a queen bed. And that's just the honest truth. There is no way to guarantee that you will end up with 2 twin beds. It's entirely possible that you might end up with a queen bed. Most TAs have a pretty substantial amount of experience under their belts, and you can rely on the fact that they have that knowledge, not only because they have been working at that job, but personally, I had to go and get my degree in travel before I became a travel agent, and I also had to take government exams. We also have an insane amount of experience because we do this day after day after day. Anybody who does something repetitively will have an absolutely fantastic amount of knowledge and will be able to answer questions and do things that you would never even think to do or to ask. That is just a simple fact, and it goes for all industries, not just for travel. Additionally, travel agents have an expansive knowledge of the industry and of what is necessary for clients, not just for themselves, but for the people they're going to be traveling with, and what they need to know about a destination or what they need to do before they leave. There are softwares out there that you probably have no idea exist and have no idea how powerful they are. And it is an absolute shame, because if people understood more about how travel agencies work, it might make them a little bit more sympathetic, and it might make them understand a little bit more that we are not in control of what you see. People also don't understand fully how to read terms and conditions. They don't know what to say and who to contact for all kinds of different issues, but by booking through a travel agency or by a travel agent, you are able to call us and we will take care of those issues for you to the best of our abilities. There are times when you need to contact the hotel or the resorts or the airlines or anybody else and be able to advocate for your clients, and a lot of people don't know how to do that for themselves or are not able to do that for themselves in a way that will benefit them. Which leads me to resources. The number of resources I lost when I left and stopped being a travel agent is monstrous. They have contacts and connections that can make events incredibly unique. When we mention things like birthdays or anniversaries or weddings or engagements, we can very often get upgrades, or at the very least a free piece of cake or a bottle of wine, something like that, that can really make a trip special. I still have a ton of resources, but nowhere near the resources I used to have as a travel agent, and that really makes me sad because it was so much easier to figure everything out going through those softwares and those resources. The software I used as a travel agent is unsurpassed in what I've been able to find. If I'm ever able to find something that's anywhere close to what I was able to use as a travel agent, I would probably try and invest in that company and promote them, because it makes life so much easier. Not only can they do things online that other people can do, but the contacts and the information that travel agents and travel agencies have as a whole is absolutely monumentous. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was a little bit of a misconception that I've run into pretty often about travel agents and travel agencies. Everybody has a budget. Whether it's big or small, you have a budget, you have something that you need to stick within. What a lot of people don't understand is that travel agents can save you a lot of money sometimes, even if you have to pay a fee to book with them. Most TAs get paid exclusively on commission, but that's on the back end. You are not personally paying that agent commission out of your pocket. The way it works is that when you book with an airline that they have an agreement or is a preferred supplier for that agency or the travel agent themselves, they get a portion of that sale or the portion of the sales as a whole. The exception is that when you're charged to open a file or to make a reservation is not because they want to charge you to try and get you to go and book on their website or to book directly with a carrier. It's because they do all kinds of research for you. You wouldn't want to go and hire somebody to do work for you if they don't have the knowledge. So the idea that you don't want to pay reservation fees, which make up a pretty substantial portion of a lot of incomes for travel agencies, is a little bit ludicrous to me. You're not paying extra. It might get a little less expensive. It may be a little less expensive to pay with, it may be slightly less expensive to book with an agency or with an agent, because very often they have agreements with airlines or hotels and they are able to get agency discounts because they're high volume consumers of a specific product or whatever the case may be. But you're not paying extra. Personally, when I was an agent, I was not paid exclusively on commission. I was paid a salary and I made bonuses. So I did not face the pressure to sell to clients constantly the way other people were. However, that pressure was still there to sell with specific suppliers, to make the company more money, and to potentially make quotas that were imposed by other people. Personally, I would never turn somebody away for wanting to book with a supplier that was not preferred or somebody that was outside of our list. However, unfortunately, I did have coworkers who would not only refuse but would at times hang up on people because they wanted to try and make better sales with another company. So that leads me into the counterpoints. This is going to be a lot shorter, mostly because I do feel pretty strongly that if you don't have the knowledge, you probably should be using a travel agent at least for some portions of your reservation, even if that means paying slightly more in a form of a booking fee or something like that. But now everybody has access to information. We pretty much all have access to the internet. If you're watching this, you have access to the internet. So we can all do our own research on destinations. You don't need to call or go in person to see someone to get information. And honestly, if you don't plan to book with that agency or that individual, do not go in and ask them questions and ask them to do research, because you are wasting their time, number one. And number two, you can do that research yourself. It is not the agent's job to do research for you, only for you to go and book on your own because you feel like you've got all the information you need. You would not do that to somebody in any other profession. You should not be doing it to travel agents either. Other things to consider if you don't want to use a travel agent, if you're someone who goes away on a whim, but you probably already know this if you've taken trips at the last minute. They are often very limited or have limited tickets, and by the time you reach a travel agent or try and book through a travel agent, they may no longer be available. Some of them are also often only available at the airport, and travel agents, obviously, since it's at the airport, do not have access to those prices. I could go on at length about that particular issue, but there are a ton of other things that I haven't gone into, like booking with a group, booking with kids, booking with pets, which you already know how I feel about that if you've seen the video about traveling with pets and why I don't take my pets traveling. If you're looking for more information on sites to use when you're trying to book, I will link the video that I did for web travel tools somewhere. I have another one coming out about apps that you can use on your phone for traveling and booking travel, so watch out for that one in the future. And let me know in the comments. I'm always very curious if you use a travel agent, if you've used a travel agent, if your family has used a travel agent, and if this video has kind of shifted your perspective a little bit on travel agents and travel agencies, or if there's any other questions you might have about travel agents or travel agencies, because I would be more than happy to answer those questions. I know it's not necessarily something that a lot of people think about, but it is a pretty important part of my life, at least, and the lives of a lot of my friends, since most of them are in the travel industry and many of them have worked as travel agents. Thank you again so much for joining me today. I hope you learned something new or you found this video useful in some way. As always, if you have any questions about today's video or comments or suggestions for future videos, you can drop them down in the comments. If not, you can always connect with me on social media. I'm at AutumnAfar on everything, and as always, I will leave you with a quote.